The twin suns bled across the sky of Kragthar, staining the horizon in molten orange as rivers of magma pulsed through the planet's blackened crust. From the highest spire of the obsidian citadel, Vorkash the Unyielding stood cloaked in armor forged from the bones of fallen kings. His reflection shimmered faintly on the glass-like stone beneath his feet, distorted by heat waves rising from the volcanic ground. He liked the distortion, it made him seem larger, more monstrous, closer to what he believed he was, the hand of inevitability. Below him, the capital stretched like a wound carved into the planet's surface. Columns of warships rose on anti-grav lifts from subterranean docks, their hulls pulsing with blue plasma veins. The banners of the Draith Collective fluttered from metal towers, each sigil representing another civilization subdued under Vorkash's rule. The air trembled with the rhythmic roar of the war chants, broadcast through the citadel's loudspeakers. Every note reminded the city of its ruler's triumphs, and his endless hunger for more. Vorkash inhaled deeply, savoring the acrid scent of molten rock and ozone. His kind thrived on harshness, their evolution had carved their bodies into weapons. Scales of obsidian-like chitin rippled over his broad frame, catching the firelight like armor alive with embers. He turned as a figure approached from behind, Strategos Drell, his second-in-command, gaunt and composed, carrying a holoslate pulsing with data streams. The War Foundries report completion of 6 new dreadnoughts, Drell said, bowing low. The sectors of Varian and Tmar submit their tribute without resistance. Only the Allur Dominion continues to delay payment. Vorkash's mandibles twitched in amusement. The Allur. The winged philosophers. They believe knowledge gives them power. Let them think so a little longer. Their world will burn more brightly when the time comes. He strode toward the massive viewport, where the void beyond shimmered with traffic, freighters, patrol craft, slave transports. The Empire moved like a living organism, each piece obedient to his will. Yet obedience bored him. He longed for resistance. For centuries, the Draith had spread their dominion, consuming weaker races until none dared defy them. Conquest had become routine, a hollow ritual performed out of habit rather than need. What news from the Galactic Rim? Vorkash asked. Any sign of new fleets, rogue factions, or ambitious fools seeking glory? None, my lord, Trell replied. Our patrols sweep the border systems daily. The last pirate incursion was extinguished within hours. Vorkash let out a low growl, something between a sigh and a snarl. No challenge. No spark left in this galaxy. We rule among cowards and corpses. He turned from the viewport and descended into the Hall of Dominion, a cavernous chamber where banners of conquered worlds hung like trophies. Each bore the symbol of a fallen empire, now reduced to ash beneath Draith boots. The hall was crowded, generals, scientists, and diplomats standing in uneasy silence as Vorkash entered. The floor quaked under his stride. He took his throne, a jagged monument of fused metal and crystal, and gestured for the council to begin. A trembling envoy from the Koran Confederacy stepped forward, his translucent skin quivering. Great Warlord, he began, voice thin with fear, we come to request leniency in tribute this cycle. Our minds fail. Vorkash interrupted. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of a collapsing star. Perhaps your miners require motivation. He flicked a talon, and the floor panel beneath the envoy opened, swallowing him into the molten abyss below. The chamber fell silent, the hiss of vaporized flesh lingering for an instant before the platform sealed again. Vorkash leaned back, bored. Anyone else wish to negotiate? No one spoke. Drell stepped forward, reading another report. The alliance of the Western Vale has dissolved, my lord. Their fleets were divided after your last campaign. Several systems now request Draith protection. Protection, Vorkash repeated, grinning. How amusing. They destroy themselves faster than I can conquer them. He rose suddenly, his voice echoing through the chamber. This galaxy was once a firestorm of ambition. Now it cowers behind treaties and fear. Look upon our works, unchallenged, untested. Power means nothing if there is no one left to crush. The generals shifted uneasily. Some murmured prayers in their guttural tongue, others bowed their heads. Vorkash's laughter filled the hall, booming against the black stone walls until it seemed the entire citadel trembled in response. It was a sound that once inspired dread across the stars, but now even it felt hollow to him. Later, as night fell across Kragthar and the magma rivers dimmed to embers, Vorkash stood alone on the citadel balcony. The stars glittered cold and distant above, indifferent to his reign. He clenched his fist, claws scraping against the railing. Somewhere, he whispered to the void, there must still be one who dares. Unseen behind him, far beyond the Draith borders, an outpost relay flickered with a faint transmission, a signal pattern unregistered in any galactic archive. It came from a region once dismissed as barren. A sector no one had cared to name. The signal pulsed once more, silent and deliberate, before vanishing into static. But in the deep sky, beyond even Draith comprehension, a new kind of fleet stirred, its engines quiet, its purpose sharp as a blade. And though he did not know it yet, Vorkash's laughter that night would be the last unchallenged sound he would ever make. The grand hall of Concord shimmered with artificial starlight, suspended above the neutral moon of Zelver Prime. It was the one place in the galaxy where warlords, diplomats, and emissaries could gather without fear of instant annihilation. Beneath the transparent dome, the gathered species of the galaxy shimmered in their various colors and shapes, gelatinous forms pulsing softly beside crystalline beings, winged envoys perched beside reptilian conquerors. It was supposed to be a symbol of peace. Instead, it felt like a cage of trembling prey waiting for the predator to speak. At the center of it all, Vorkash the Unyielding sat upon the black throne carved from the wreckage of the Varian Star Fortress, a trophy from a war so devastating that entire systems still smoldered decades later. His armor gleamed beneath the chamber's soft light, absorbing it rather than reflecting. Every movement of his taloned hand seemed to cut the air. Around him, the Draith Honor Guard stood in silent formation, their weapons humming faintly, a reminder that even here, under treaty, his dominance was not to be questioned. One by one, representatives of the smaller civilizations took their turns at the central dais, each voice brittle with caution. A scaled diplomat from the Jarth Dominion bowed deeply before speaking. Honored Council, the outer colonies continue to suffer shortages from the Draith trade blockade. We humbly request an easing of shortages. Vorkash's voice cracked through the silence like a thunderclap. If your colonies are too weak to feed themselves, perhaps they should serve under those who are not. The Jarth envoy flinched, words dying on his tongue. No one interrupted. Even the mechanical emissaries of the Sereth Forge, creatures of logic, immune to fear, hesitated to speak. Vorkash leaned forward, his mandibles curling into something like a smile. Tell me, do you believe peace exists because of your treaties, or because I allow it? No one answered. Across the hall, a faint hum of energy rippled through the assembled, translators working overtime to process the silence into 100 native languages. Vorkash chuckled softly, low and menacing, the sound vibrating through the floor like the growl of an engine about to ignite. He rose, each movement deliberate, theatrical. You gather here every cycle to discuss stability, trade, progress. You convince yourselves that words hold power. But let me remind you, every treaty you've signed, every fragile alliance you cling to, exists because I have not yet chosen to break it. A murmur spread through the chamber. The luminous beings of the Alar Dominion rustled their wings uneasily. One of them, taller than the rest, dared to step forward. Warlord Vorkash, the Council seeks unity, not domination. Even you must see that endless conquest breeds only emptiness. You have no equal left to fight, no empire left to test your strength. Vorkash's laughter rolled like thunder. Empty words from a dying species. The Alar preach wisdom because their talons grew dull. Your kind once soared across the stars, now you beg for mercy in the shadow of my ships. The Aller envoy stiffened. Mock all you wish, Draith. But history is unkind to those who mistake fear for respect. Vorkash descended the dais in 3 slow steps. The floor panels dimmed beneath his boots, reacting to his presence. He loomed over the Aller representative, his breath hot and metallic. Respect is earned through fire and blood, he said softly. Fear is simply the acknowledgement of truth. And the truth, feathered one, is that your entire dominion exists at my pleasure. He turned from the envoy and raised his arms to the audience. Look around you. Empires reduced to embassies, warriors turned into diplomats. You call this progress, but it is decay. You've traded your claws for words, your fleets for committees. You are insects living in the ruins of your ancestors' courage. He gestured toward the massive holographic display that filled the center of the hall, a rotating map of the known galaxy. Entire sectors glowed crimson, representing Draith control. Only a few scattered lights remained neutral or independent. Vorkash stared at them with disdain. Tell me, which of these still imagine themselves free? Which dares to oppose the inevitable tide? Silence again. The council chamber seemed to shrink under the weight of his scorn. Then, somewhere in the back, a voice spoke, small, almost trembling. There are rumors, it said. From beyond the Edge Nebula. Unregistered ships, human in origin. The word hung in the air, alien to most ears. Human. Few in the galaxy had ever seen one. Most dismissed the species as myth, primitive remnants from an isolated blue world that had destroyed itself ages ago. Vorkash turned his head slightly, one eye gleaming. Rumors, he said, the amusement creeping back into his tone. How amusing. Another ghost story to comfort the weak. The speaker, a crystalline envoy of the Seraph Forge, lowered its light. They claim these ships move unlike any known fleet. They coordinate as one. They do not respond to communication attempts. Then they are cowards hiding behind tricks, Vorkash said. Let them emerge, and I shall burn their illusions to ash. He turned his gaze back to the council. This is why your kind will always fall. You speak of ghosts and phantoms while I command legions. You whisper of hope while I shape reality. When I laugh, your worlds tremble. He let his laughter erupt again, deep and unrestrained, filling every corner of the hall. The sound carried through the structure's crystalline frame, echoing out into the void above Zelver Prime. Delegates flinched, some lowering their heads, others retreating toward exits. Only the Aller envoy held his ground, wings spread in defiance. When the laughter finally subsided, Vorkash's eyes glowed faintly with inner fire. Remember this sound, he said quietly. It is the sound of truth. The sound of inevitability. He turned and strode from the chamber, his guard following in rigid formation. Behind him, the assembled species watched in silence. No one dared to speak until long after his departure, when only the faint hum of the starlit dome remained. Far beyond that dome, on the dark edge of the galaxy, the rumors the Warlord had dismissed gathered in formation, hundreds of ships with no known insignia, their engines burning silent blue against the void. And while Vorkash's laughter still echoed in the council chamber, somewhere in that endless black, a human voice murmured quietly into the comms, fleet confirmed. Target locked. Let's show them what unpredictability looks like. The Warlord's flagship, Dominion's Fawn, cut through the black sea of space like a blade of obsidian, its hull wreathed in red plasma veins that pulsed with each thrum of its colossal engines. In the command chamber, Vorkash stood before the tactical holosphere, its surface alive with data streams from the farthest edges of the Draith frontier. The reports had come in bursts over the past cycles, fragmented, contradictory, and now impossible to ignore. Entire patrols gone silent. Outposts reporting vanishing lights before transmission loss. A single word recurring across the last few entries, unknowns. Strategos Drell stood beside him, posture rigid, claws twitching as he manipulated the holodisplay. 3 fleets lost communication in the rim sectors, he said, his voice a low hiss. Each on a different trajectory. The last transmission from the Tralise outpost contained distortions. Distortions? Vorkash repeated, turning sharply. Speak clearly, strategos. Trell expanded one of the feeds. Static filled the holosphere, then a brief flash of light. A ship, Draith design, spun violently, its engines cut in half by something unseen. The recording froze at a single frame. The shape of an object, angular and unfamiliar, emerging from shadow. It lasted only a heartbeat before the image disintegrated. Impossible to identify, Trell said. No emission trail, no heat signature. It appeared, then disappeared. Vorkash's mandibles flexed slowly, his tone deep and measured. Our ships do not vanish. They fall, with honor, with record, with wreckage. This leaves none, my lord. The silence in the chamber thickened. The crew at their consoles avoided eye contact, their movements mechanical, efficient, terrified of drawing attention. Vorkash's gaze lingered on the frozen hollow image, that flicker of the unknown. He dismissed it with a gesture. A distortion, he said. An anomaly. Space itself plays tricks. Perhaps your crews are losing discipline. Trell hesitated. The anomalies have pattern, sire. Coordinated spacing across sectors. They. Vorkash turned on him, eyes glowing molten. Are you suggesting a threat hides in my domain? The strategos bowed low, the movement quick, instinctive. No, Warlord. I only observe that. Enough. Vorkash waved a clawed hand. Double patrols. Expand our sensor arrays. If there is something out there, we will find it and grind it beneath our hulls. He strode to the viewport, staring out into the void. Kragthar's faint red light had long since vanished behind him, leaving only the endless black dotted with cold stars. To most, space was emptiness, to Vorkash, it was territory, something to be consumed, possessed, filled with his presence. But as he stared into the abyss, a rare, fleeting sensation crawled beneath his skin. Not fear. Not yet. But the faint, almost imperceptible edge of uncertainty. Trell lingered near the tactical table. Permission to recall the advance flotillas, sire. Until we confirm. No, Vorkash snapped. We advance. To retreat from shadows is to feed them. He turned, his tone lowering. Deploy the vigilant spear fleet to the Edge Nebula. I will not have my borders whispered about like haunted graves. If there are pirates or hidden fleets, I will crush them myself. Hours later, the vigilant spear entered the nebula. The dense clouds glowed faintly blue, interference distorting every scanner ping. The lead ship, Ravager, sent back telemetry, fragments of data flickering with static. The Draith commander aboard transmitted a brief report, no visuals. Strange readings. Movement without mass, then silence. In the command chamber, Vorkash watched the feed collapse into nothing. He waited for the reconnect signal. It didn't come. His claws dug into the arm of his command chair, leaving shallow gouges in the alloy. Contact the Ravager, he ordered. No response, my lord. Deploy rescue craft. Rescue craft already dispatched. They too have gone dark. Trell stepped closer, voice low. It is spreading, sire. Whatever it is, it's not random. Rumors and panic, Vorkash growled. I have seen this before. Fleets vanish because their commanders lose resolve. Weakness infects them before the enemy does. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. This is Vorkash the Unyielding. You will not succumb to ghost stories. You are Draith. You are the storm that reshaped galaxies. Any who falter will be purged for treachery. The transmission ended, leaving only the low hum of the ship's systems. Hours later, the sensors pulsed again. A faint distortion, moving fast, too fast for known propulsion. The tactical officer reported, voice tight. Object approaching, vector 17 by 9. No identification. Vorkash leaned forward. Visual. The holosphere flickered, revealing a ripple in the nebula, a shape phasing in and out of view, sleek and angular, its movements precise. Then it was gone. What was that? Trell demanded. The officer's hands flew over the controls. No trace. It's like it wasn't there at all. A sudden flash of light exploded across the viewport. One of the Draith cruisers, the Iron Claw, breaking apart from within, its hull peeling open silently. No projectile, no beam. Just obliteration. Shields. Vorkash roared. The Dominion's Fong shuddered as unseen forces grazed its hull. Weapons discharged blindly into the mist. Plasma bolts vanished into emptiness. For a moment, the nebula fell utterly silent. Then the comms came alive with static, followed by a single voice, crisp and alien in its precision. This is Admiral Lena Caro, United Earth Command. You have trespassed beyond your reach. The bridge went still. Vorkash froze. The translation system hesitated before registering the language, unknown yet perfectly comprehensible. Caro's voice continued, calm and measured. You wanted a challenge. Consider this your first lesson in humility. Then the signal vanished, leaving only the echo of human words and the stunned silence of the Draith flagship. Vorkash stared at the void where his fleet had vanished, and for the first time in his long, merciless reign, his laughter did not come. The wreckage of the Iron Claw still burned in the darkness, molten fragments drifting like dying embers through the haze of the nebula. The Draith fleet hung in uneasy silence, weapons charged, eyes fixed on the shifting void that had devoured their sister ship. Vorkash stood at the command dais, motionless, his claws digging into the edge of the console as static hissed through the comms. The bridge crew waited, breath shallow, the metallic scent of fear almost tangible in the recycled air. Re-establish contact with all vessels, he ordered finally, voice low, steady, but every word weighted like a threat. No response from Ravager, Vigilant, or Iron Claw wings, my lord, the comms officer said, voice barely above a whisper. Remaining ships report interference across all frequencies. Scanners are blind. Vorkash turned his head slowly toward Strategos Drell. Find them. Now. The Strategos hesitated only a moment before snapping orders. Drones launched from the flanks of the Dominion's Fong, vanishing into the blue fog like sparks into a storm. For long minutes, the command chamber pulsed only with the rhythmic thrum of engines and the quiet ticking of failing sensors. One by one, the drone signals winked out. Then, movement. A flicker in the holosphere. Something vast, silent, and alien gliding through the fog, its shape refracting the light like a shadow pretending to be solid. The Draith officers leaned forward, tension crackling. Identify, Vorkash said. Unknown configuration, Drell answered. No emissions, no ID codes. It's behind us. Before the words finished leaving his mouth, the rear sensors flared white. A shockwave slammed through the Dominion's Fong, hurling several crew from their stations. Alarms screamed as the hull shuddered under the impact. Vorkash roared, claws raking against the wall for balance. Shields to full. Return fire. The gunners obeyed instantly. Plasma beams erupted from the ship's flanks, searing through the nebula, but every shot struck only empty space. The enemy was there and not there, moving faster than Draith tracking could calculate. Another flash of blue light, and one of the escort cruisers split cleanly in half, venting fire and bodies into the void. Target lost again, a technician shouted. It's using some kind of optical phase. Enough excuses. Vorkash's voice drowned the alarms. Lock coordinates and fire on everything that moves. The Dominion's Fong unleashed its fury, a storm of light that turned the nebula into a shifting sea of color. Explosions rippled across the sector, but none found their mark. Then, for a heartbeat, the fog parted, and the enemy revealed itself. A formation of ships, smaller than Draith cruisers but far sleeker, moving in perfect synchronization. Their hulls were matte black, etched with faint lines of blue that pulsed like veins. No banners. No transponders. And at their center, a single larger vessel, angular and predatory, bearing the insignia of a silver sphere encircled by a thin ring, United Earth Command. The bridge fell silent. Vorkash stared. Humans, he said, the word tasting alien even on his tongue. The human flagship transmitted on all frequencies. Admiral Lena Caro's voice echoed through the chamber again, calm and cutting. Warlord Vorkash. We are here to end your terror. Power down your weapons, surrender your fleets, and stand down. The Draith crew exchanged uncertain glances. Surrender was a word that had never been spoken aboard a Draith ship. Vorkash's laughter exploded suddenly, harsh and guttural, echoing through the hull. End my terror? You appear from mist and think to challenge me? You are insects cloaked in tricks. Caro's voice came back, unshaken. Tricks. You think this is trickery? No, Warlord. This is precision. This is planning. And this is the moment your empire begins to die. Fire, Vorkash snarled. The Dominion's Fong launched a full salvo, titanic plasma lances and missile storms surging toward the human formation. But before impact, the human ships shifted, each movement exact, impossibly coordinated. The missiles hit decoy projections. Plasma blasts dispersed against invisible energy fields. And then came the counterattack. From the human flagship, hundreds of microcraft erupted, autonomous drones moving with hive-like precision, weaving through Draith defenses. They attached to hulls, detonating with controlled pulses that disabled rather than destroyed. Systems flickered out across the Draith fleet like lights going dark one by one. Trell shouted orders, trying to restore control. Shields down to 40%. Weapons grid collapsing. They're not destroying us, they're disabling. Vorkash slammed his fist into the console, sparks flaring. Cowards. Fight with fire, not illusions. But the human tactics were relentless. Every Draith response was anticipated, countered, nullified. When Vorkash ordered his ships to scatter, the humans predicted the vectors. When he regrouped, they were already there, surrounding him. Admiral Caro appeared once more on the comms, her face sharp and expressionless. Your reign of domination ends tonight, Vorkash. This galaxy is no longer yours to devour. Bold words from a species that hides in fog, he spat. Do you think this victory matters? I have conquered civilizations older than your kind's first fire. Caro leaned closer to the display, her gaze unwavering. And yet, for all that conquest, you never learned the one thing that makes us dangerous. And what is that? Her voice was almost a whisper. We adapt. The connection cut. A moment later, every human ship vanished, cloaked, gone, leaving only silence and drifting debris. The Draith fleet hung broken and scattered, its systems crippled, its flagship scarred. Vorkash stood amid the chaos, the hum of failing machinery surrounding him. Trell approached slowly, voice quiet. What are your orders, my lord? Vorkash did not answer immediately. He stared into the darkness where the human fleet had disappeared, the echo of Caro's voice lingering in his mind. His claws flexed once, slow and deliberate. Find them, he said at last, his tone soft but deadly. Find the humans. And when we do, I will tear the secret of their courage from their corpses. The stars outside flickered. Somewhere, deep in the void, humanity was already watching. The storm above Kragdar broke in crimson lightning, streaking across the volcanic horizon as the obsidian citadel trembled beneath the force of the returning fleet. The once proud war armada of the Draith limped into orbit, hulls scorched and engines bleeding plasma trails that glowed like open wounds in the night sky. One by one, the damaged warships descended toward the foundry docks, their silence more damning than any defeat report. The Warlord's armies, undefeated for generations, had come home broken. Inside the citadel, Vorkash stood before a projection of his empire. Red systems blinked with activity, dozens more flickered to gray, communications lost, control uncertain. He stared in silence, the light from the display washing over the jagged contours of his face. Strategos Trell entered, his posture stiff with dread, clutching a slate of casualty figures. He hesitated before speaking. "My lord, 37 ships destroyed, 12 disabled beyond recovery. Over half the vigilant spear fleet is missing. The humans attack crippled." "Humans," Vorkash interrupted, the word burning through his throat like acid. "They strike once and vanish like ghosts. They think their disappearance makes them safe. But there is no safety beyond my reach. Their technology outmaneuvers our sensors, sire," Drell continued carefully. "They anticipate our formations, our reaction times. We cannot fight what we cannot see." "Then we will not chase them," Vorkash said, turning away from the display. "We will lure them." He strode across the chamber, his armor clattering against the metal floor. "They mock us with stealth and misdirection, as though war were a game of shadows. Very well. Let them believe we are crippled. Let them come to finish what they began." He stopped before the great viewport overlooking the planetary forges. Below, the surface blazed with activity, thousands of forge masters laboring to rebuild ships and weapons. Vorkash's voice dropped to a low growl. "We will bait the humans with weakness, and when they come for the kill, they will find the jaws of the beast waiting." Trell hesitated. "If they attack again, our losses could be catastrophic." Vorkash turned, eyes blazing. "Losses are irrelevant. Victory demands blood. Theirs or ours, it matters not. What matters is the lesson." He raised a claw and gestured toward the tactical display. "Deploy the remainder of our fleets to the outer sectors. Scatter them. Transmit false distress signals. Let the humans think the Draith are fractured. When they reveal their positions, we strike from the core." Trell bowed deeply, though the motion carried the weight of unease. "As you command, Warlord." When he was gone, Vorkash stood alone in the echoing chamber. His reflection glared back at him from the obsidian floor, familiar, powerful, but no longer untouchable. The memory of the human voice echoed through his thoughts. "We adapt." He clenched his fists, claws scraping sparks. "We will see whose adaptation endures," he muttered. Across the galaxy, the Draitha's feigned retreat sent ripples through every intelligence network. Word spread, fragmented reports of internal collapse, mutinies, fleet withdrawals. But in the deep void beyond the Edge Nebula, Admiral Lena Kara watched the data streams from the command deck of the UES Horizon's Wrath and smiled faintly. "They're baiting us," said Commander Reyes, leaning over the tactical table. "Classic predatory tactic. They think we'll rush in to finish them." Caro folded her arms, gaze steady on the holographic projection of the Draith sectors. "They underestimate us. Again. What's our move?" Reyes asked. "We give them what they want," Caro said. "But not on their terms. If Vorkash wants a spectacle, we'll deliver one." Her eyes hardened, the calm steel of a commander who'd seen the impossible and learned to make it routine. "He expects power. He won't expect unpredictability." Within hours, the human fleet moved. Small task forces scattered across Draith space, striking communications relays, disabling supply chains, then vanishing before retaliation could form. Each attack left confusion in its wake, false signals, sensor echoes, ships appearing in multiple places at once. To the Draith, it looked like thousands of human vessels were swarming their empire. Panic began to fracture their unity. In the War Council chamber, Drell reported grimly, "Our forces cannot track them. They strike and vanish. They're using deception to multiply their presence." Vorkash slammed his clawed hand into the table, splitting the metal. "Deception is the weapon of cowards. Face them. Find their command ship and obliterate it." "We're trying, my lord," Drell said, trembling. "But they move beyond our comprehension. Their tactics." "Tactics?" Vorkash spat. "You call this chaos tactics? They lack honor, structure, command. They fight like animals." He paced toward the viewport again, his reflection distorted in the molten glow below. But the truth gnawed at him. Animals did not coordinate with such precision. This was something else, something more dangerous than mere rebellion. The comms console chimed. A transmission cut through the interference, human in origin. Vorkash turned slowly. "Open it." Admiral Caro image flickered into existence, projected above the war table. Her face was calm, unshaken, illuminated by the cold blue light of her command deck. "Vorkash," she said evenly. "You still think in terms of domination and conquest. You think strength is measured by what you destroy. But strength is adaptation. It's the ability to change faster than your enemy can comprehend." "You speak as though you understand war," he growled. "I understand it better than you ever will," Caro replied. "You built an empire on fear. We built ours on survival. And survival always wins." Her image vanished before he could answer. A low tremor rolled through the citadel. One of the outer orbital platforms exploded, torn apart from within. Seconds later, another blast echoed across the horizon. "Sabotage!" Drell shouted, rushing in. "Human infiltration units, inside the orbital command." Vorkash's eyes widened. For the first time in his long reign, he realized the truth: the humans were not coming. They were already here. Outside, the storm turned violet as the human fleet emerged from hyperspace above Kragthar, silent, coordinated, flawless. The laughter that rose in Vorkash's throat never reached his lips. The first wave struck like a thunderclap, the human fleet descending from orbit in perfect synchrony. Plasma lances and kinetic bombardments tore through the upper atmosphere, slicing through Draith defense grids that had stood for centuries. Shields flared and shattered, the night sky above Kragthar burned white. The obsidian citadel's walls quaked as shock waves rippled across the continent, magma veins rupturing from the sheer concussive force. Warlord Vorkash stood unmoving as alarms screamed across the command decks. "They dare strike here!" Drell shouted over the chaos. "The core world itself." Vorkash's claws scraped the edge of the tactical table, gouging deep scars into the alloy. "They want me to see," he said quietly. "They want me to watch." Outside, human troop carriers streaked downward through the burning clouds, dropping suborbital mechs that hit the ground like falling mountains. The impact shockwaves flattened Draith fortifications, sending tremors racing through the volcanic plains. Automated turrets sprang to life, cutting into the landing zones, but the humans adapted mid-descent, deploying reflective drones that scattered targeting sensors and confused missile locks. The Citadel's communications officer turned, panic flashing across his scaled features. "Warlord, our planetary defense network is collapsing. Every sector is under attack." Vorkash's response was a low growl. "Then collapse it completely. Force them closer. Make them pay for every meter." Drell hesitated. "My lord, if we destroy the network." "Do it." Vorkash roared, his voice shaking the chamber. "If they want a fight, give them one that will shake the stars themselves." Across the planet, Draith commanders overloaded reactors, detonating their own defensive platforms. Columns of plasma erupted skyward, catching the human assault craft in crossfire. The night was transformed into a storm of fire and steel. For every Draith stronghold that fell, another exploded in defiance. Yet still, the humans advanced, fluid, relentless, impossible to pin down. In the depths of the citadel, Admiral Kara watched from a hololink aboard the Horizon's Wrath. "They're burning their own cities," Reyes said beside her. "They'd rather destroy themselves than surrender." "They're desperate," Kara replied softly. "And desperation breeds mistakes. Let them burn their empire, we'll walk through the ashes." Her voice carried through the fleet-wide channel, "All units, execute Operation Eclipse. Focus on the Citadel. Vorkash falls tonight." Thousands of ships realigned in orbit, forming concentric formations around the planet. From above, their positioning resembled a tightening noose. Inside the Citadel, sensors flickered with interference as the humans launched microsatellite disruptors into the atmosphere, cutting Draith communications completely. Vorkash's empire was deaf and blind. "Warlord," Drell said urgently, "they're jamming all transmissions. We can't call for reinforcements." "Reinforcements?" Vorkash's laughter came out harsh, guttural. "There are no reinforcements. There is only war." He turned to the balcony, watching as streaks of light descended toward the city below. His own soldiers were still fighting, still roaring defiance even as the ground split beneath them. He drew his plasma blade, the weapon's core humming with raw power. "If they come for me, let them come in person." Far above, Caro's strike team prepared for descent. Reyes secured his armor and checked the charge on his pulse rifle. "We've got about 90 seconds once we're through the outer shields," he said. "That's all we need," Caro replied. She adjusted her helmet, sealing it with a hiss. "We end this now. Vorkash doesn't get to rebuild." Their drop pods launched from orbit, hundreds of blazing comets cutting through the night. The shock of their landing rippled through the citadel, shaking foundations. Human marines spilled from the pods, silent and precise, using gravity anchors to move through the rising dust clouds. Draith warriors met them in the corridors, towering figures of obsidian armor and rage. Plasma clashed against coilgun fire in close quarters, painting the hallways in arcs of molten metal. Vorkash moved through the chaos like a force of nature, his blade cutting through his own wounded guards to clear a path. He reached the central sanctum, his throne chamber, and turned to face the entrance. The great doors burst inward, molten at the edges, and Admiral Caro stepped through, weapon drawn. "Vorkash," she said, her voice amplified through her suit. "It ends here." He regarded her with something between hatred and admiration. "You are bold for one so small." "Boldness built our species," she replied, advancing slowly. "You've ruled through fear. You've enslaved entire worlds. Tell me, how does it feel to be the one trapped now?" His laughter was deep and resonant, echoing off the walls. "Trapped? I am surrounded by the dead and the dying, yes, but it is your species that stands too close to the fire." He raised his blade. "Let us see who burns first." The clash was immediate, brutal. Vorkash's strength was overwhelming, every strike hammering against Caro energy shields. She rolled aside, firing short bursts that scorched his armor but barely slowed him. The chamber erupted with secondary explosions as Draith reactors overloaded in the distance. The ground itself trembled. Reyes appeared through the smoke, covering her flank. "Admiral, flanking left." "I see him," she shouted, ducking under a swing that could have cleaved a transport in half. She planted an electromagnetic charge on the ground and vaulted backward. The explosion detonated beneath Vorkash, staggering him for the first time. His armor cracked, leaking molten plasma. Caro aimed her weapon, steady and unshaking. "This is for every world you burned." Vorkash lunged, but she fired first, a pulse round straight through his chest. The impact sent him reeling, his blade falling from his hand. He dropped to one knee, claws scraping the floor. Caro stepped closer, lowering her weapon but not her guard. "You thought power was control. You never understood that power is what you give others, the freedom to fight back." The Citadel's core reactors began to overload, the air humming with rising energy. Vorkash lifted his gaze to her one last time. You think you've won. But you're kind, you carry the same hunger. Maybe, she said. But we remember what it costs. The reactor surge consumed the chamber in blinding light as the human strike team withdrew, their evacuation pods firing upward through the collapsing spire. The obsidian citadel disintegrated in a torrent of fire visible from orbit. Above the dying world, the human fleet stood in silent formation. The laughter of the alien warlord was gone, swallowed by the roar of humanity's defiance. The fires of Kragdar burned for 3 days and nights, visible even from the outer moons. The once mighty obsidian citadel was nothing more than molten glass and smoke, its jagged towers reduced to slag that glowed faintly in the endless dark. Above the ruined planet, the human fleet held formation in silent vigil. Every ship's sensor arrays scanned the surface for residual signals, but none came. Vorkash's empire, the empire that had once stretched across half the quadrant, was gone. Inside the command deck of the Horizon's Wrath, the atmosphere was heavy with exhaustion. Officers moved quietly, their voices low, their eyes hollow from sleepless days. Admiral Caro stood at the main viewport, the planet's burning outline reflected in her visor. The silence between her and the crew spoke louder than any victory speech could. Confirmed detonation at the Citadel core, reported Lieutenant On. All Draith transmissions have ceased. No life signs from the upper strata. Lower caverns are unstable, lava flows swallowed everything. Reyes stepped forward, his armor still scarred from the ground battle. Then it's over. Caro didn't answer immediately. Her gaze lingered on the red glow below. No, she said finally. It's ended. But that doesn't mean it's over. The bridge fell quiet again. On frowned. Admiral, scans still show faint energy emissions from orbit. Nothing solid, could be wreckage interference. Caro turned. Or it could be survivors. Reyes checked his readouts. If any Draith ships made it past the atmosphere, they'll be crippled. They won't get far. Caro eyes narrowed. Send patrol wings to track those signatures. I don't want anything slipping away from this system. Not one ship, not one drone. As the orders rippled across the fleet, the Admiral deactivated her visor and took a long breath. She could still smell the ozone from the drop pod burns in her suit, the lingering trace of fire and ionized metal. Every commander dreamed of ending a war, but no one ever spoke about what came after. In the silence of space, the fleet's engines hummed softly. Somewhere deep within the ship, a transmission pinged, encrypted, human origin, but unregistered. Reyes picked it up first, scanning the data. Admiral, we've got an incoming message from outside the primary relay network. Source unknown. Put it through, Caro said. The holodisplay flickered to life, static washing across the room. A voice came through the distortion, low, ragged, unmistakably alien. Human fleet, you believe you have won. The bridge froze. The voice was strained, the sound of someone speaking through failing lungs. Then the image stabilized. Vorkash appeared, half his armor melted, one eye gone, his body supported by a wrecked console. Behind him, flames licked the shattered walls of a damaged command chamber. Impossible, Reyes whispered. He should be. Caro's voice was steady. Alive. Vorkash coughed, black blood dripping down his mandibles. You came with fire and arrogance, just as I did. You think yourself different. But your war, it will not end. It will consume you, as it consumed us. Caro stared at him, unreadable. You're finished, Vorkash. Your empire's gone. Empires, he growled, are ideas. And ideas do not die. The Draith will remember what you've done here. And so will others. The transmission crackled with interference as his voice deepened. I once laughed at the thought of humans. I thought you fragile, foolish creatures of instinct and impulse. But now I see, you are not fragile. You are what comes after fragility. You survive not by strength, but by your hunger. He leaned closer to the camera, the flickering light glinting off his shattered fangs. And that hunger will devour the stars. The feed cut abruptly. Silence filled the bridge once more. Reyes looked to the admiral. Orders. Trace that signal, she said. I want to know where he sent it from. On's fingers flew across the console. Triangulating, signal bounced through debris fields, multiple relays. It's fragmented, but, he froze. There's an outbound transmission vector. It's not just local. It's leaving the system. Destination? Caro asked. Unknown. Could be deep space. Could be another network. Reyes cursed under his breath. He's sending a message. A warning. Caro straightened. Or an invitation. The human fleet shifted position, scanning the wreckage for movement. None came. The fires on Kragdar dimmed to embers as the last reactor cores cooled. The silence felt wrong, too heavy, too final. Hours later, in the officers' quarters, Caro sat alone at her desk, recording her report to the Earth Council. The Draith Dominion has fallen. The warlord Vorkash is presumed dead, though there's evidence of a final transmission. Details attached. Total casualties, high, but acceptable for operational objectives. She paused, eyes lingering on the reflection of the burning planet. Recommend increased surveillance of outer sectors. If the Draith survive, they will not remain silent. And if they don't, someone will take their place. She ended the recording and leaned back, exhaustion sinking into her bones. Through the viewport, the fleet drifted against the endless dark, tiny sparks in the void they had just conquered. In the debris field beyond Kragdar's orbit, something stirred. Hidden within the wreckage of a destroyed Draith dreadnought, a faint pulse of energy flickered, an escape pod, shielded and cloaked. Inside, Vorkash's body lay motionless, his breath shallow but steady. Machines hummed around him, grafting synthetic flesh over shattered bone. His remaining eye opened. Stars reflected in it like shards of glass. He did not laugh this time. He simply whispered into the darkness, adaptation, begins anew. The pod ignited its thrusters, vanishing into the black sea of space, leaving behind only silence and the ghosts of war. The escape pod drifted for weeks through the abyss between stars, its engines long dead, coasting on momentum and silence. Vorkash's mind flickered in and out of consciousness, trapped in the half-dream of a dying warrior. Machines whispered around him, repairing, reprogramming, rewriting. The pod's medical core had long exceeded its design limits, fueled only by emergency algorithms designed to preserve command life at any cost. Flesh became alloy. Bone became filament. What emerged was something that had once been Draith, and something far beyond it. When Vorkash's eyes opened again, they burned a colder hue than before, the pale light of a mind reborn. The pod's scanners pulsed faintly, detecting a gravitational field ahead. A rogue moon, adrift in the shadow of a dying star. It would serve. He rerouted what little power remained to the thrusters and descended through the gray storms, landing with a thud upon a barren, metallic plain. He emerged slowly from the wreckage, his armor fused to his flesh, his movements heavy with both agony and purpose. The planet was dead, no air, no sound, no life. But to Vorkash, it was pure. Untouched by empire or weakness. A place where beginnings could take root. He staggered across the plain until he reached a fissure that split the crust wide open, glowing faintly with subcrustal energy. He stared into it and saw his reflection in the molten shimmer below. Adaptation begins anew, he murmured. His voice no longer carried the resonance of the Draith, it was metallic, layered, a harmony of machine and will. He sank his claws into the rock, feeling its vibration through his frame. The humans fight with unpredictability. so shall I. He began to build. Weeks turned to months. Using fragments of his escape pod and the materials from the moon's core, Vorkash forged a new citadel, a skeletal structure of alloy and neural conduits, pulsing with dark energy. Drones awoke from the planet's dust, shaped from fragments of his own DNA, grown into metal and muscle. He called them the KRYTH, born without fear, without hesitation, linked directly to his will. They spoke no words, but they understood. The first to awaken bowed before him, its armor gleaming like liquid graphite. Vorkash studied it with a detached pride. "You will not inherit my empire," he said softly. "You will build a new one." The KRYTH tilted its head, awaiting orders. Vorkash pointed toward the black sky. "There are stars out there filled with arrogance. Civilizations that believe themselves untouchable. They will learn as I have learned, that nothing survives without evolution." Above the rogue moon, silent ships began to take shape. Vorkash had salvaged fragments of Draith schematics from his memory banks, merging them with human battle tactics he had witnessed. The result was a fleet unlike any other, organic hulls, adaptive weaponry, shifting forms. Each vessel could learn from every engagement, reconfiguring its structure based on experience. War was no longer fought through strength alone, it was an ecosystem of intelligence, feeding on conflict itself. Meanwhile, light years away, humanity celebrated. The victory at Kragdar had reshaped the balance of power across the quadrant. Worlds once enslaved by the Draith now flew human banners, their leaders pledging alliance to the Terran coalition. For the first time in generations, peace seemed more than an illusion. Admiral Caro stood before the Earth Council in the orbital citadel above Luna. The chamber was vast, its ceiling transparent, offering a view of the stars they now called safe. "With the fall of the Draith Dominion, the outer sectors are stabilizing," she reported. "But I recommend continued vigilance. The silence beyond Kragdar is unnatural." One of the counselors leaned forward. "You mean survivors?" "Possibly," Caro replied. "Or something else. The Draith were a species built on dominance. Creatures like Vorkash don't just vanish. They adapt." The counselor smiled faintly. "Admiral, the war is over. We've entered a new age. Humanity stands united for the first time in history. We have the technology, the fleets, the resources. Let's not see shadows where none exist." Caro's expression didn't change. "I've seen shadows take form. And I've watched them swallow planets." When she left the chamber, the stars outside seemed somehow colder. She paused at the viewport, her reflection merging with the darkness. Somewhere out there, she could feel it, the same unease that had carried her through every battle. The instinct that whispered, "It isn't done." That night, in her private quarters aboard the Horizon's Wrath, she reviewed the telemetry from Kragdar one last time. Among the debris scans, one file caught her attention. A single heat signature had vanished seconds before the planet's destruction. Too small for a ship. Too fast for debris. "Computer," she said, narrowing her eyes, "enhance the vector trail." The screen magnified the trace, a faint ion pattern heading toward uncharted space. A rogue moon orbiting a dead star. Her heartbeat quickened. "Transmit coordinates to deep reconnaissance. Priority 1. Half a galaxy away, Vorkash stood upon the platform of his new citadel, the fleet rising around him like a storm. The KRYTH ships unfolded their wings of black alloy, the air humming with the rhythm of machinery and life. Above him, the dying star flickered once, as if in recognition. He looked up, eyes reflecting its fading light. "The humans believe they understand war," he said quietly. "They mistake victory for evolution. But evolution never ends." He raised his hand, and the fleet ignited in silence, scattering into the void like a swarm of steel locusts. Each ship carried a fragment of his mind, his will, his memory. Each would learn, adapt, and spread. As the last vessel disappeared into the darkness, Vorkash remained still. He could almost hear their laughter now, the laughter of humans who thought themselves invincible. It echoed faintly in his mind, and for the first time since Kragthar, the alien warlord smiled. Not with arrogance, but with understanding. The horizon's wrath cut through the silence of deep space, her hull illuminated by the distant gleam of a dying star. For days, the crew had operated under strict blackout, running cold, no transmissions, no signals. Admiral Caro stood at the forward viewport, her arms folded as she watched the endless darkness ahead. Somewhere beyond that dying light lay the coordinates, the rogue moon no probe had ever mapped, the anomaly that haunted her reports. Approaching target system, Reyes said quietly from the helm. Minimal radiation interference, but no readings. It's like the sensors are blind. Caro eyes narrowed. Passive scan only. I want eyes on that moon before it knows we're here. The wrath drifted closer, gliding on momentum alone. The dying star hung like a bleeding ember, its light washing the moon in dull crimson. The surface appeared metallic, scarred, geometric in places, too precise for nature. Zoom in, Caro ordered. The holographic display expanded. Sprawling structures emerged from the dust, towers, spines, conduits stretching across the planet's face. It looked less like a city and more like a wound that had healed wrong. Reyes exhaled slowly. That's no Draith ruin. Caro said nothing. Her instincts screamed. Every surface, every pattern was wrong. Too deliberate, too alive. Power signatures. Minimal, unreported. But, there's something beneath the surface. It's pulsing. Like a heartbeat. Caro straightened. Bring us in closer. Ready strike team 1. The landing craft detached from the ship and descended through the thin veil of dust and static. The atmosphere was barely breathable, trace gases and metallic particulates that glimmered in the light of the star. When the ramp opened, Caro led the way, her boots crunching against the strange, glass-like soil. The air tasted of iron and ozone. They advanced toward the nearest structure. It towered above them like the skeleton of a god, black alloy veins running through its surface, glowing faintly from within. Reyes brushed his gloved hand against it. It's warm. Caro touched her wrist console. Command, this is ground team. We've confirmed artificial construction. Materials unknown. Proceeding with scan. Static answered. She froze. Reyes, check comms. He began, then stopped. No uplink. We've been cut off. The tower beside them vibrated, a deep, resonant hum rolling through the ground. Dust cascaded from the cliffs in fine waves. The faint glow pulsed brighter, sinking with a slow rhythm. Then, a voice. It didn't come through the air. It came from inside their helmets. A chorus of tones, metallic and layered. Adaptation complete. Caro heart hammered once, hard. Weapons up. The ground split open beneath them. Shapes emerged from the fissures, sleek, bipedal constructs with glistening armor, their movements fluid, almost biological. Their eyes burned the same cold hue as Draith plasma. But their forms were leaner, faster, human in silhouette. Reyes fired first. The plasma bolt hit one of them dead center. It staggered, and then reformed, the wound sealing in seconds. Another one lunged, claws snapping against his armor. Caro raised her rifle, firing point-blank into its core. The shot blew it apart, but fragments wriggled on the ground like living metal, crawling back toward each other. Fall back, she shouted. To the dropship, now. They ran across the cracked terrain, explosions tearing through the air as the constructs advanced in perfect synchronization. The ship's cannons opened fire from orbit, lighting the horizon in blue flame. Still, the enemy pressed on, absorbing the bombardment, shifting forms to adapt. Caro reached the dropship ramp, turning to cover Reyes as he stumbled behind her. "Go," she yelled, grabbing his arm and hauling him inside. The ramp sealed just as a clawed hand struck it, leaving molten streaks in the metal. "Get us out," she ordered. The pilot didn't hesitate. Engines roared, the ship lifting through the choking dust. As they ascended, the full scale of what lay below came into view. The moon's surface was moving. Towers reconfiguring, structures folding inward, new shapes emerging. And at the center, something vast stirred, an immense silhouette rising from the crust, wings of metallic shards unfurling like an eclipse. Caro's eyes widened. "Reyes, that's not a fortress. It's a ship," he whispered. From orbit, the horizon's wrath detected it first, a gravity distortion rippling outward from the moon. "Admiral, we're picking up energy spikes." On's voice crackled through the comms. "Something's powering up beneath the surface, massive scale. Prepare the main rail batteries." Caro shouted, strapping herself into her harness. "Target that structure and fire on my mark." The Wrath's cannons charged, arcs of light crawling along the hull. But before she could give the order, the enemy moved. The moon cracked apart. A colossal vessel rose from within, a fusion of machine and flesh, its hull shifting like a living thing. Energy tendrils lashed outward, connecting with the orbiting debris, drawing it in, reshaping it. The ship was building itself from the remains of the moon, feeding on the planet's metal and gravity. Reyes stared in horror. "That's Vorkash's doing. It has to be." The ship's core pulsed once, and a shockwave rippled through the void. Systems across the Wrath flickered. Comms died. Lights dimmed. Caro gritted her teeth. "Brace for impact." The energy wave hit like a tidal force. The human fleet was thrown into disarray, ships spinning, shields collapsing. Dozens went dark in an instant. The alien vessel extended long, spined appendages that glowed with coalescing energy. Then it spoke, not through sound, but directly into every human mind. "We have learned your chaos. We have become it." The alien warlord's voice was unmistakable, distorted, deeper, but alive. Caro gripped the console, fury flashing through her eyes. "Vorkash." Her words were drowned in the rising hum of power from below as the ship's core flared like a newborn sun. The warlord had returned. And this time, he didn't laugh. The alien warship loomed against the dying light of the star, its shadow blotting out constellations, its hull alive with crawling light. The horizon's Wrath drifted wounded, her armor cracked, systems bleeding sparks. Inside, chaos was replaced by grim resolve. Admiral Caro stood on the bridge, hands steady despite the tremor of exhaustion. The crew watched her, waiting for an order that might end them, or save everything. "Damage report," she said, voice sharp as steel. On's reply came through static. "Shields gone. Weapons down to 30%. Reactor stable, but if that thing fires again, we're vapor." Caro turned toward the viewport. The alien ship had stopped moving. Its vast form hovered silently, energy lines pulsing across its frame like veins beneath translucent skin. Somewhere inside that living metal was Vorkash, merged with the Draith machine, reborn as something beyond understanding. Reyes staggered onto the bridge, armor scorched, eyes hollow. "Engineering's holding." "Barely. We can still move if we reroute the emergency cells." Caro nodded. "Then we move. Plot a course straight into that thing's core." He froze. "You're not serious." "Completely." On spun around. "Admiral, if we ram that ship." "We won't ram it. We'll detonate the quantum drive inside it. That's the only power source big enough to crack it apart." Silence hung over the bridge. The hum of failing systems filled the air. Everyone knew what that meant, there'd be no time to escape the blast. Reyes stared at her. "You'll kill us all." Caro's gaze didn't waver. We're already dead if that thing reaches the colonies. No one argued. Not because they agreed, but because the logic was brutal and undeniable. Reyes, she said quietly, get me a path to its heart. He swallowed hard, then began typing. The ship groaned as thrusters ignited, its engines screaming as they forced the crippled vessel forward. Alarms blared, hull temperature rising, gravity buckling. The alien warship reacted instantly, beams of pure energy sliced across space, tearing chunks of armor from the Wrath. Caro gripped the rail. Stay on target. Reyes snarled, pushing the throttles to maximum. Holding course. Each impact threw them sideways. Consoles erupted in sparks. Crew screamed, systems died, yet the Wrath kept pushing forward. Through the viewport, the alien ship's surface opened, revealing a pulsating core, blinding, shifting, like the heart of a sun. Now! Caro shouted. Lock trajectory. Reyes hit the command. The autopilot seized control, engines burning white-hot. The ship was on a collision course, one that couldn't be undone. Caro stepped forward, staring into the light. For a brief moment, she saw something, figures moving in the glow, outlines of the Draith, thousands of them, fused into the walls. Their voices whispered through the static, a single thought carried across the void. End the cycle. The alien ship's surface twisted, forming a face, the semblance of Vorkash, vast and terrible. Its eyes glowed with furious recognition. You choose death. Caro raised her chin. No. We choose peace. The Wrath dove into the heart of the alien ship. Metal screamed, reality buckled, and time seemed to stop. For a heartbeat, everything was still, the two ships locked together, predator and prey. Then Caro reached for the console and entered the override code. The quantum drive engaged. A surge of light filled the bridge. The crew looked up, calm now, the fear gone. Caro's last words were barely a whisper. For Terra. The explosion tore through space like a second dawn. The alien warship convulsed, its structure collapsing inward as the energy core destabilized. Shockwaves rippled outward, devouring the debris, erasing everything in white fire. Then silence. From the edge of the system, a single transmission flickered through, fragmented, but clear enough to reach the human fleet still fighting in the dark. Target neutralized. Mission complete. Static followed. The Wrath was gone. But so was the alien ship. The star, once dying, flared again briefly, its light scattering through the wreckage. The void quieted. No more enemy signals. No more movement. Weeks later, a recovery team from the surviving fleet found remnants drifting in orbit, a scorched insignia plate from the Wrath, a fragment of its blackened hull, and a single recording preserved in the debris. The voice was Caro. If you're hearing this, it means we did it. The Draith are gone. Vorkash is gone. Maybe we're gone too. Doesn't matter. What matters is that humanity gets another sunrise. Don't waste it. The transmission ended in static. Years passed. The colonies rebuilt. Statues of the Wrath's crew stood in the capital's Hall of Light. Children touched their names engraved in steel. And sometimes, on clear nights, when the sky shimmered faintly above the horizon, the older soldiers swore they could still see a flicker of blue flame among the stars, like a ship cutting through eternity, still keeping watch. Reyes' voice echoed once more in the memory logs, quiet and unshaken. She said we'd be the spark in the dark. Guess she was right. And far beyond the reach of any sensor, in the silence between galaxies, something faintly glowed, an ember that refused to die, pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat, carrying the last whisper of the human spirit across the endless night.